Democratic Republic of Congo's President Joseph Kabila makes a major announcement. We'll explain what it means. A U.S. lawmaker in the Midwestern state of Michigan is set to become the first Muslim woman to serve in Congress. And in East Africa, Ethiopia restricts internet access amid new protests. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhui. You are in for Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight, we begin our broadcast with huge news out of Central Africa. Democratic Republic of Congo President Joseph Kabila says he will not seek re-election in the December presidential election. Government spokesman Lambert Mende made the announcement Wednesday, ending years of speculation on whether Kabila would seek a controversial third term in office, despite a constitutional two-term limit. Kabila was supposed to step down in 2016 at the end of his mandate, but he invoked a constitutional clause allowing him to remain in office as a caretaker, and the election to replace him was repeatedly delayed. The continuous postponement of the election triggered protests that were violently suppressed, with the military and police killing dozens of people. Militia violence also increased in the nation's volatile eastern borderlands. Congo, a country of 80 million people, has never had a peaceful transition of power since it gained independence in 1960 from Belgium. Now, for more on the latest developments in DRC, I'm joined by Idriss Fall, a reporter with VOA's French to Africa service. Idriss, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther, and thank you to your viewers.
Now you know this is a new person supposedly going to be running for this big job in DRC. What do we know about Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary?
Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary is not new at all because he had been the executive secretary of the PPRD, which is a political party on power, the party of Mr. Joseph Kabila. And before, he was a member of the UDPS, the main opposition party of Mr. Etienne Tshisekedi, and from there he moved to go at PPRD. And while being executive secretary of PPRD, he occupied briefly, a couple of weeks, the Ministry of Interior. But since then, until yesterday, he was the executive secretary. He was chosen. And his name, people was talking about, is going to be him. He comes from the region called Maniema, in the region of Kindu. And people say that he may be related by family from the side of the mother of Joseph Kabila. And I think he may have a chance because he's the coalition at the power, has the most representative of the parliament. Congo is huge. You have a lot of small parties, and mainly they are concentrated in big cities like Kinshasa, the capital. And the country, you just said at the beginning, is more than 80 million people, and it's huge. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a lot of means to cover the whole country, I think that are his advantage among the other candidates, I think.
All right, Idriss, I think we're going to have to leave it there for now. We'll be watching and see how the political scenario in DRC unfolds. Thank you very much for being on Africa 54. Idriss Fall is a reporter with VOA's French to Africa service. Now, there are conflicting reports on Wednesday as to whether or not former Zimbabwe finance minister and opposition politician Tendai Biti has been arrested by police. According to Reuters, Biti's lawyer says he was detained by police as he tried to cross the border and seek asylum in neighboring Zambia. But sources have told VOA that there was only an attempt to detain Biti, but that he is in Zambia. Biti, whose party formed an election alliance with President Emerson Mnangagwa's main rival Nelson Chamisa, is the first senior opposition politician to be arrested in the aftermath of last week's disputed presidential election won by Mnangagwa. Biti's lawyer, Nkobizita Mulilo, says Biti was arrested after presenting himself to Zambian immigration officials at the Chirundu border post north of Harare and police had not yet informed him of the charges. BT had been hiding since last week, fearing for his life after authorities say they were looking for him in connection with an outbreak of violence following last week's disputed election in which Mnangagwa was declared the winner. Tuesday, August 7th, was Kenya's 9/11, the day of the worst terrorist attack in the country's history. 20 years ago, a truck bomb destroyed the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi, killing 213 people, most of them Kenyans. A simultaneous attack on the U.S. Embassy in Tanzania that same morning killed 11 more. In Nairobi on Tuesday, hundreds gathered to remember all those who were killed and injured. Mohammed Yusuf reports.
About 200 people, including some of the survivors, gathered in this park Tuesday to remember their loved ones and offer a prayer. They were joined by U.S. Ambassador Robert Godek, other embassy officials and Kenyan officials. Families laid flowers and recited the names of the dead. Diana Mutisia, who was injured, said the attack changed her life.
With the time, I've lived to live positively and also had that change of attitude and also felt that life must go on despite what happened. But I live one day at a time.
Douglas Sidialo lost his sight on the day of the attack. Now, the spot where he was injured has become a place of hope for him.
When I come here at the Memorial Park, I consider this as a sanctuary of peace, a sanctuary of love, and a sanctuary of unity. And also to demonstrate that whatever happened to us, our spirits are strong.
Al-Qaeda claimed responsibility for the August 7, 1998 attacks on the two U.S. embassies. The bombings killed a total of 224 people and injured nearly 5,000 others.
In an awful moment, the lives of thousands changed forever, as did the lives of their families and friends. Today, we remember and mourn those who were killed, and we stand with all who were injured or touched by this brutal attack.
Despite efforts to improve security and thwart terrorist attacks over the years, Kenyan officials warn the threat still exists.
The threat remains, requiring continued vigilance, but our determined efforts have fundamentally blunted the ability of terrorist actors to destroy the fabric of our social, religious, and political life.
Here, the families spoke of forgiveness and unity, but vowed never to forget the attack that has changed their lives forever. Mohammed Yusuf for VOA News, Nairobi.
Nigerian security forces stopped lawmakers from entering parliament on Tuesday in a blockade seen by the opposition as a bid to intimidate its leaders. But the presidency condemned the move, and the acting president, Yemi Osinbajo, fired the head of the security agency. It's the first such incident since Nigeria became a democracy in 1999. It also coincides with increased tension between the National Assembly and the executive ahead of an election in February 2019, when President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to seek a second term. Osinbajo is acting president for Buhari, who last week left for a 10-day holiday in Britain. The blockade followed the defection of some 50 lawmakers from Buhari's ruling All Progressive Congress Party to the main opposition in the last few weeks. This includes the country's third most senior elected official, Senate President Bukola Saraki. A former U.S. state lawmaker, Democrat Rashida Tlaib, defeated 5 challengers in Michigan's 13th congressional district primary election on Tuesday and is set to become the first Muslim woman to serve in the U.S. Congress. VOA's Ken Faribault has followed Tlaib's campaign throughout the year and has more from Detroit.
Alam Jabara lives in Chicago, Illinois, 6 hours away from Detroit, Michigan. which means she can't vote in the state's primary election. But the race for Michigan's 13th congressional district was too important and personal for Jabara to miss, which is why she drove the 6 hours to volunteer in Rashida Tlaib's campaign on Election Day.
As a Muslim American, as an Arab American, as a Palestinian American, I'm her, she's me.
Though it's an election in Michigan, Tlaib's campaign for Congress has historic nationwide implications, particularly for Muslim American women, who view Tlaib's candidacy as a door opening.
Just getting the text messages from young girls. I just got one from New York, like, hi, you don't know me, my name is Homa, but like, I just want you to know I'm watching this in New York. It makes me emotional. Yeah. Like just thinking like, oh my God, this is so wonderful. So it's really cool.
Rashida is a woman who cares about the people at the grassroots level, and she's built a new generation of young people who want to run for office as well. She's turning out first-time voters, not just youth, but elders who are first-time voters who've been, American citizens for a long time. Even those who were born here have never voted before because they had no faith in our government.
Those voters made the difference for Tlaib, something she and her supporters only realized after a long wait into the morning for results of a contest that, until the end, was a close race.
If Detroit's website is to be believed, we've won this race.
Though overcome with emotion upon hearing the final tally, Tlaib took the opportunity to recognize the importance of her historic moment for her family.
I want to show my mom, who's from a small village in the West Bank. They're literally glued. It's like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning. And now it's more than that. But they're glued to the TV. My grandmother, my aunts, my uncles in Palestine are sitting by and watching their granddaughter.
Since there is no Republican challenger in November, the primary election is the only close race Tlaib will face before being sworn in as a freshman U.S. Congresswoman, a role many Muslim Americans across the country are now watching with eagerness and hope.
Rashida is them, right? Rashida is going to be their face, their voice in Congress. And Rashida being in Congress is going to be like, okay, we're American just like you are.
There could soon be more like her. Somali-American lawmaker Ilhan Omar is running for a congressional seat in Minnesota August 14th and could eventually serve alongside Rashida Tlaib in the U.S. Congress. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Detroit, Michigan.
Migrant laborers in southern Italy went on strike Wednesday to protest at the deaths of 16 colleagues killed this week in 2 separate traffic accidents. 12 migrants died on Monday as they were traveling home after a day in the field. Their packed van collided head-on onto an oncoming truck. Just 2 days earlier, 4 migrants also died in a near-identical accident. Both crashes happened near the city of Foggia, close to the Adriatic coast. More than 200 migrants marched on Foggia from their camp known as the Great Ghetto, some 10 kilometers away. The protesters, mostly from sub-Saharan Africa, say their work is unregulated, allowing unscrupulous bosses to pack them into overcrowded vans and driving them from one farm to another without any type of contract. Thousands of migrant workers work in the fields harvesting tomatoes and are paid about $3.50 an hour, less than half the minimum wage for agricultural workers. Now, when U.S. and European charity shops have unsold clothes, they are packed in bulk and bought by exporters who ship them to sub-Saharan Africa. Moves by sub-Saharan nations to impose tariffs or bans on used clothing importation in order to protect their indigenous textile industries have been strongly responded to by U.S. trade authorities, which just hit Rwanda's second-hand clothing importation tariff with a significant counter-move. More details now from VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young.
The ongoing row between Washington and a series of sub-Saharan African states over U.S. used clothing exports stepped up at the end of July when the U.S. Trade Representative's office hit Rwanda with punitive tariffs on its new clothing exports to the states in return for Kigali's tariff on second-hand clothes brought in from the U.S. This is taking place under the U.S. African Growth and Opportunity Act. In 2015, Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania announced that starting in 2019, used clothing imports would be banned. The tariffs have been imposed in the interim. A U.S. secondhand clothing trade group, the Secondary Materials and Recycled Textiles Association, says these moves imposed to protect SSA's own textile industries allegedly hurt impoverished Africans. Via Skype from Atlanta, Global Clothing Industries CEO Lamine Ba.
I don't just want them not to ban used clothing. The new strategy they are doing now, they're trying to increase the tariff. The customs of used clothing is becoming very expensive. Just trying to discourage people not to buy used clothing.
The U.S. trade group says SSA importation bans would cost it some 40,000 American jobs. The U.S. Agency for International Development says used clothing in 2016 provided 22,000 jobs in Rwanda. It also provided 160,000 jobs in Kenya, 87,000 in Uganda, and 81,000 in Tanzania. But while thousands in SSA are making a living selling used clothing, as are tailors and seamstresses who alter them to fit their new owners, it has also impacted the development and growth of African countries' own textile industries. A point made via Skype by NGO Aid by Trade Foundation's Tina Spide.
And we definitely see that textile industry has been going down, and there's hardly any textile industry in some of the countries that had a prosperous one, or at least they had an industry in textiles and garments in the 80s.
The tariffs and attempts to ban imports to protect domestic textile activity has opened the market to another threat, as discussed via Skype by NGO Overseas Development Institute analyst Linda Calabrese.
If you phase out second-hand clothing, if you increase the price of second-hand clothing, what happens is that these will become more and more expensive to import. And then this will make, in comparison, imports from other countries more competitive. Now, who are the big producers today? It's Bangladesh, of course, and China as well.
The U.S. disagreement with some SSA countries over used clothing is seen by many as part of Washington's overall effort to conduct trade on terms more in its favor. But critics say picking trade fights with developing nations doesn't help them grow. Jeffrey Young, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Still ahead on Africa 54, the impact of Ethiopia's internet shutdown. But first, a look at Wednesday's headlines.
And the evidence that those results reflect a total negation of the will of the people.
Authorities in eastern Ethiopia are blocking internet access amid an outbreak of violence. Containing ethnic tensions in some parts of the country is a sign of the challenges still facing reformist Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Residents from the Oromia region and others from the city of Harar say the internet connection had been down for 3 days. The first time access has been cut since Parliament lifted a state of emergency in June. Violence erupted last Saturday in Jijjiga, the capital of Ethiopia's Somali region, with mobs looting properties owned by ethnic minorities, raising fears the violence could spread into other parts of eastern Ethiopia. On Monday, the president of Ethiopia's turbulent Somali region, Abdi Mahmoud Omar, resigned following violence in which at least 29 people were killed. Abiy, a 41-year-old former army officer, is pledging greater freedoms for the country. And in the 4 months since he took office, the government has released political prisoners and lifted a ban on opposition groups. Now, for more on the ongoing violence in eastern Ethiopia, I am joined by VOA Amharic reporter Henok Fente. Henok, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me, Esther.
Now, what appears to have triggered the latest wave of violence in eastern Ethiopia?
Well, there has been disagreements with the Somali regional state and the central government in Addis. Of course, the regional president who resigned on Monday, better known by his nickname Abdi Ille, has been accused of several human rights violations and not keeping security in the region that transpired for federal forces to intervene over the weekend. So currently, the situation in the regional capital, Jijjiga, as well as other towns, remains very tense. However, there has been tremendous security progress. Residents have been telling us, you know, as you mentioned in your intro, several people are staying in churches fearing for their securities. Shops have not opened, internet was down. So the situation is rather tense, but it's improving currently.
Now, Henok, there have been also conflicting reports as to how this president of the region resigned. Did he resign? Was he forced out? What do you know?
It depends on perspectives, but what we know factually is he had resigned and he had been replaced by a former finance minister of the region, and there is a new leadership. However, we don't know the details of the resignation. We don't know if there is going to be any accountability. The former leader of the region has his own army. He has his own security militia that he controlled, has created problems to neighboring regions. There has been conflicts. So the intervention of the federal forces is something that constitutional lawyers are discussing currently. Is it legal for the federal government to intervene in regional affairs? Is it not? And under what circumstances? This is being debated in Ethiopia right now.
A good question there, which probably, you know, Prime Minister Abiy will have to step in. He is known to be a unifier to see how he can quell the situation. Henok, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me, Esther.
Henok Fente is VOA's Amharic service reporter. Now, most African farmers and small businesses operate with no way to protect themselves if disaster strikes, but that may be starting to change. A handful of companies are now offering inexpensive tech-driven micro-insurance and are making it easy for ordinary Africans to sign up. Neha Wadeka reports from Nigeria and Kenya.
George Kamau Githome sells hardware and bootleg movies in Mathare, one of Nairobi, Kenya's largest slums. Most here are overlooked by insurance companies because they cannot afford a regular policy. Githome is lucky. He had a new kind of microinsurance that saved him and his family of 10 kids after a recent fire destroyed everything they owned.
When they came, they took photos and saw how helpless I was. I had nothing. Then they paid off my loan and supported me with something small. Then I started this business you see out here, and the result you see inside.
East Africa Regional Director for Microinsure, Kireni Karika, says mobile technology makes microinsurance cheaper and easy to use.
We enable them to be able to enroll even as simple as using their mobile phone, just by dialing a particular short code on their mobile phone, and then registering on their product just using their first name and their last name.
In northern Nigeria, smallholder farmer Henry Jaru is buying microinsurance from another company, Pula, to protect his family farm from drought.
Normally by this time the crops will have gone far, but you see we're still planting some of them. So I think we're hoping that probably we won't experience any shortcoming from the rain or the worms this year.
Project manager Samson Ajibola says Pula uses satellite data to track weather patterns to make insurance cheaper for farmers.
You know, before now, Nigerian farmers have not been, adequately insured because the existing product in Nigeria does not cover, smallholder farmers.
Pula bundles the policies into small loans or purchases of fertilizer. so smallholder farmers are automatically insured. Older farmers, like Jaru's father, Thomas, are still skeptical because of bad experiences with insurance companies.
Generally, when the time comes up for them to pay you, indemnify you, you will not find them. They begin to show you the small print. You didn't do this, you didn't do that out of the policy. So it can ruin the whole thing, and people get discouraged.
Microinsurance providers hope their services can change that perception and turn a profit while giving Africa's small farmers and businesses some protection if and when things go wrong. Neha Wadaker for VOA News, Kaduna, Nigeria.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. A German startup has taken advantage of the strong Bavarian sun this summer to test the final development of the charging system of its Sion car, an all-electric vehicle with solar panels to top up the battery as you drive. 330 solar cells integrated into the bodywork add an extra 30 kilometers to the car's normal range of around 250 kilometers. The company says the car will be produced by a local manufacturer yet to be announced in Bavaria in the second half of 2019 and already has around 5,000 orders. And in other solar news, could this be the future of cooking? Dozens of so-called solar chefs are demonstrating the power of the sun to produce tasty dishes at this solar cooking festival in China. Heimin Solar Energy Group organized the festival to convince chefs and home cooks alike to try out solar cookers, claiming they have the power to reduce harmful greenhouse gas emissions. The food is inserted into a glass or metal vacuum tube surrounded by curved mirrors that direct the sun's heat onto the food. The vacuum inside the tube helps to keep the heat in, with temperatures topping 400 Celsius inside the tubes. And finally, a co-ed group of sleep-deprived programmers in a marathon Saudi contest this week explored high-tech solutions to prevent a repeat of past calamities in the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Thousands competed in the kingdom's first-ever hackathon, a coding festival ahead of the world's largest pilgrimage later this month. A group of 5 Saudi, Yemeni, and Eritrean women worked on an app for paramedics to speedily reach people in need of medical attention using geo-tracking technology. If multiple emergencies arise at once, the women hoped their app would help prioritize the most pressing cases. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. So, you know what happy is, and medium comes between small and large.
To find a happy medium.
So, is this idiom about feeling kind of happy?
How is it going with your neighbor? Is he still complaining about your playing the trombone at night?
He was, but it's fine now.
How did you guys work it out?